The fucking guy's dive bombing, and then he misses the carrier and drops the bomb in the water. That's fucking me. That's me after the third kid with my diet and exercise.
Okay.
I wasn't doing too bad, but it's the recent release stuff that have just thrown me off. Like that house stuff, all the other stuff going on, that's kind of just...
Well, stress does it too. And if you spike your stress one day, it's something like 3 days before your body is back to normal. And so if you're spiking your stress 3-4 times a week, you're literally never normal.
All right.
Well, yeah, it's always like one thing after another.
Okay, guys, we are live. Sound is good.
Oh, it is good?
Yep.
So we can start?
We've advertised our whole...
Have we done the
lives to
advertisements?
Yep.
Look at you, Darren, sneakily starting the feed on us.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't say
9 o'clock, man. It's 9 o'clock.
Well, usually it's 9:05 with the intro.
Yeah. Or we get a heads up we're going online. No, now we...
No, it's...
And I've got this rash.
It's good conversation. It's good conversation for the outtakes.
Yeah. 3,000 calorie dinners after Warhammer tournaments.
Yeah. People are now they're learning the truth.
That's a topic to add to the list, like how to eat at Warhammer tournaments.
How to eat.
Yeah, exactly.
How to not end up fat like us. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good evening and welcome to CanHammer, your stop for Warhammer 40k from the Great White North. Today's episode is episode 191, and it's all about the new Marines.
Yeah.
New, old, seems to blends into one another.
Yay.
Dudes in armor, killing other things. It is what it is. Okay, so joining us live from Quebec, we have...
Bonsoir. How's it going?
And all the way up in, I guess, Northern Ontario, we have...
Not quite, but yeah. Nick, what's up?
You know, you guys have become so regular that I'm getting a 4-person overlay made. Because I never had a 4-person overlay. There you go.
That warms my heart.
And joining us in the red trunks, from Ottawa, we have...
Darren.
And I'm Chris, at CanHammer Chris on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to get a hold of me.
I am wearing red trunks, but I won't stand up. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, we believe underwear. We don't need to see it. We trust that you're wearing
Everybody
trunks.
knows that Darren casts in his underwear.
That's right. Nobody would know.
That could be great. So I guess this show's gonna be all action packed. We're gonna start off with the Space Marines, maybe go through some news first, and then see how it goes. So we kind of want to just hit the main topic because we have a lot to talk about. This show we're actually going to avoid the supplements that were kind of released, and I call them supplements, but they're more like FAQ supplements. I think some of those don't really need a dive because they got nerfed, Blood Angels. But other ones have a lot of intricacies that could really synergize well with the main book. But so don't expect those. It'll just be the Marine Codex today. So I guess we'll jump on to the news. Darren?
I don't think we have any news. Other than just came out. What other news have we had?
Okay, we'll go with that.
A couple points.
We've got a couple points. He's not reading the show notes, obviously.
Oh, I didn't even know we had show notes.
Space Marine and Necron Codex up for pre-order.
Oh, yeah, okay. Woo-hoo. Oh, well, that's what the whole show is about.
But they've been totally leaked, and everybody has copies of them. I actually noticed the drives with the files got taken down really quick this time.
Really? Oh, really? Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah. Good thing I saved them on my computer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess, Nick, you have something you wanted to report on news?
Yeah, I just wanted to say congrats to the Tabletop Titans. So their YouTube channel, you guys probably know about them. Brian Pullen is one of the hosts. He won SoCal last year. Anyways, I mentioned them because they started their Tabletop Premium service, so they're getting into the whole subscription-based YouTube thing. But what was surprising is in 2 days, they hit 1,000 subscribers.
They're at 1,200 now.
1,200 YouTube Premium subscribers in what must be less than a week or around a week now, which is
2 days. Literally, it started on Sunday.
It's amazing. Every live stream they run has 1,500 people watching. It's pretty crazy.
Oh, great!
That's amazing. They get tons of people. They had so much people asking questions that they tried to filter it by doing super chats. If you donate $5 to the channel. And that hasn't stopped it. They literally sometimes spend an hour or two after their battle reports, just answering the backlog of questions. Anyways, it's just a smashing success, and
congratulations, man. That's a huge, shout out the people that are very successful in our hobby and kind of moving it forward. I've never heard of something that successful that just did battle reports and Warhammer content, right? Usually those are like video gamers that kind of do it on the side, but that's great. That's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on. I think that's it for news, so we'll talk about the codexes, obviously, but anything to add?
I guess if you're into AOS, the new thing coming out, the Giants are coming out soon.
Oh, yeah.
They're pretty sweet.
There's a lot of negativity online because apparently their rules suck, but they're not even out yet, so how do you even know?
The models look really, really good.
It's the best Giant they've ever made.
Yeah.
The one thing that I really like about this kit is the last Giant kit, they made a lot of efforts to make it like interposable, so you could kind of make a little bit different, but not really. These ones, they showed like 5 or 6 of them, and they all look distinctly different from the same kit.
This is the first Giant kit they've made since that, I don't know if it was like 3rd or 4th edition fantasy one, the like fairy tale giant with the trunk in its arm. I used to own them with the big beard that I've liked, because they've had a bunch since then, even the Aelgaz Gargant or whatever, and they had the Giants of Albion, like we're talking, I don't know, 20 years ago. None of them I thought have done Giants like justice, and this is the first one I thought, these look sweet.
Well, if you want to play an army of 5 models, might be your cup of tea.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move over to the sponsors and keep the lights on.
All right, well, shout out to all our supporters and followers, subscribers, and patrons, of course. Thank you, guys. And shout out to Dan and Dylan at Red Dragon. And also David Testaminis, Hoyt at Thunder Games and Gifts, and Martin over in the UK.
Yeah, right on. Thank you for your support. So let's go right into the main topic, Space Marines. So let's start off a little bit. I think we've had a little bit of hate on the Marines for the last little while. So let's get that out of our system. It's gone. Okay, push that Marine hate all the way deep down inside of your organs. And it's been a couple of years where they've been one of the big boys on the block. And they've been given, maybe not a couple of years. Yeah, it's been pretty close to a couple of years. And they've been kind of giving everybody a hard time. And they've gone through many different iterations. And actually, looking back and preparing for this show, I kind of forgot a lot of the nerfs that had come through that book. Like if you go back to right when this book first dropped, the previous book, things like Raven Guard were moving, basically starting 9 inches out of your deployment zone, moving and then charging you turn 1, and things like that with like squads and squads of assault sense. Yeah. And just the unkillable dreadnought lists and the
repulsors, the unkillable repulsor list.
Spam, yeah. Well, there was the executioners, and then before that it was the regular repulsors. And if you go through, this codex has gone through maybe 8 or 9 rounds and nerfs, it feels like, already, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's some pretty big changes in this new codex.
Yeah, so you kind of forget that when you're thinking about, when you're playing the Marines of, I guess, a week ago, and you're comparing them to a year and a bit ago, it's a big difference in their power level, and this, I think, even is a little bit more. So that's kind of cool that they've started fixing their game, I guess you could say. Like you forget that even if this book comes out and it's bent and there's a couple things that we don't like, those things theoretically shouldn't be there or shouldn't be as powerful in a few months, right? If things continue the way they are.
Well, it can't be any worse than last year's Iron Hands, that's for sure.
So I wanted to start off on a positive note, but could be worse than Iron Hands. But anyway, I want to start off on a positive note, and I wanted to kind of go what people's favorite thing about Space Marines are between the 4 of us, just to get off on a good start. So we'll start with you, Francois, from the not necessarily gameplay perspective, but what's your favorite thing about Marines? Why do you love them?
Well, for me, Marines are 40K. I don't know if it's because when I started playing and I was like 13 years old, my first army was Marines, as was most people's first army. And the lore is obviously all about the Space Marine, and you read the books, and it's like 40K and Space Marines, for me anyway, are kind of one and the same. We joke that they're the poster boys, but that's because they are, right? So I just love Space Marines. I have 3 different chapters of Space Marines on the shelf right there, and they're all painted in the proper colors. I'm just a Space Marine fanboy.
Yeah. So Dick, what do you love about Space Marines?
I mean, I'm a lot like Francois. I am one of the negative ones about Space Marines, but I think a lot of that comes from actually loving Space Marines a lot. Because I just read the first 3 Horse Heresy books again in the last couple weeks. So them in the lore, I like the martial values of Space Marines. It's like anybody in the army wants to be a Space Marine. You know what I mean? And it really feels like that in the tabletop. I'll give it to them. When they're bent, at least they feel like they're super soldiers on the battlefield. It feels bad for everybody else. But hopefully this codex tones that down so they can still feel super, so that your individual Marine is super on the battlefield. And you get that feeling while I still have fun as well. So I don't know. I do love Space Marines.
Darren, what do you like about the Marines?
I just like the heresy. I mean, that's what kind of, the whole fiction of the Horus Heresy, how it's like the 20 chapters, they all have their own little thing. And I really like the Primarchs, how they're like, the sons of the Emperor, and they all have their certain personalities and stuff. And it kind of filters down into their their sons. So I really just like the lore of the Space Marines. Not so much that they're kind of like, like soldiers or whatever, but just the whole sort of 30K Horus Heresy type fiction background of the whole thing, which is kind of like the basics for the whole game, right? But yeah, that's what I really like about them.
Okay, great. So I'm the same as you guys. I just love the Horus Heresy. I love the look. I love the style. It's they're basically the best thing in the game. And like fluff wise, they're the only thing I enjoy reading about. So like fluff wise. Rules wise, Orcs is the best, of course. But
yeah, Orcs fiction is really hard to read because all the words are weird and.
Okay, so I wanted to get started with kind of the chapter tactics and what's in this book. And so this book has evolved from the past. When we all started, I think it all started in 3rd edition, a lot of this stuff. They had the main Marine book, and then they always had supplements for some of the key chapters. And the supplements didn't really make sense because you'd have things like Black Templars and that aren't an original founding, and then you'd have Iron Hands that never had a supplement until very recently, right? So it never really made sense. And so this book, the thing I really like about it is that it's basically all the Marine chapters in one book, all the core elements. So if something gets nerfed in the core book, or if they add or take away units, kind of everybody gets it. And so that was maybe a problem in the past where you'd have a Dark Angel supplement and they'd add something cool to Marines or a new type of Land Raider or something like that, and the Dark Angels wouldn't get it until fairly recently when they started adding them in FAQs. But prior to that, you'd kind of be boned, right? Like Blood didn't have this, and Dark Angel just didn't have that. Whereas now it's kind of all in one. It's great. And so for the most part, they've covered all of the 9 non-traitor legions, as well as a few other ones. So I'll kind of hand it off to, I guess, Francois to start. What are some of the legion traits or chapter traits that have changed from the old to the new? Or what are the big differences in this book?
Well, for the main current supplements, there hasn't been massive changes. Like they did a little bit of tweaking. Like Iron Hands, for instance, they lost. Iron Hands was always famous for having too many rules. People used to complain that they had like rules upon rules upon rules. Well, they removed one of those rules, so now they don't get their overwatching on 5s anymore. Not that Overwatch is such a big deal these days, but and they can still with the CP do it on 4, so like it's not a big deal. But it's a little bit of cleaning up there, right? Other than that, there's not massive changes for the main Space Marine legions that have supplements. I mean, they tweaked so there's the big one. I guess I should mention is Imperial Fists that got kind of boned a little. Imperial Fists really got the I don't know why they were nerfed again, but Imperial Fist's super doctrine was changed to only work on heavy weapons that are strength 7 or above. So it no longer works on heavy bolters, which again is kind of weird because both things are their thing. But for whatever reason, I guess the rules designers didn't want heavy bolters doing damage 3 now that they've been buffed to damage 2. That's
that'd be nice.
That
But
would be nice.
That was an extra nerf on Imperial Fists, who are really not one of the top performing chapters anyway. So that one's kind of puzzling to me.
But if you played a vehicle list against Imperial Fists, I guess now the Devastator Doctrine only turns 1, but still, that was enough.
And sure, you can activate, now there's a strat in a new book to activate all doctrines at once on a unit. but I believe that's only for a core unit. So I mean, there's still some design space there. Anyway, so there were some changes to the doctrines themselves, but nothing too groundbreaking, like too major. I don't think that's where the massive changes in this book come from.
No,
Well,
so one of the big ones, yeah, as you mentioned, Imperial Fists. A lot of the other ones are very similar. I guess Space Wolves had a major change, or somewhat major change, and Raven Guard, I think, had the two biggest changes. Would you guys agree?
So the Space Wolves change is huge.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, but you said we weren't talking about Space Wolves today.
No,
well, it's
okay,
part of
sorry,
the-
that's my
it's
bad.
part of the Marine.
We're talking about the
book
main
now.
book. We're not talking
Okay,
about the
alright.
supplement stuff.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah, yeah.
Chris.
Okay,
That's
well,
my
yes,
bad,
yes.
Francois.
So
Go ahead.
so I used to play a Warlord trait, which gave me a 12-inch aura of heroic intervention, and it was so good. Now their whole army can just do it, and 6 inches. That's so good, so good.
Yeah, and that's great.
What do you
for a
mean
lot of
6 inches?
reasons.
No, they can just heroically intervene.
6 inches.
No.
I'm pretty sure it's 6 inches.
No, units of this tactic are eligible to perform heroic intervention as if they were characters.
Yeah, it's 3 inches. Maybe there's
I thought
maybe
there's
abilities
a
or
thing which
whatever.
lets the characters, or maybe it's just characters do 6 inches. Okay, anyway,
But
it's
so-
still amazing.
Yeah,
But yes.
oh yeah, having everything be able to heroic, yes.
Yeah, it's really great. You can overlap units on objectives, and then you can't charge one without getting within range of the other. Because normally you can do that anyway with the 1 inch, by lapping units together. 3 inch, being able to both kind of go in is kind of a big deal. So that's good. Now Raven Guard lost a lot. So do you remember what the Raven Guard were before,
Good.
Francois?
If I'm honest, Raven Guard is one of those chapters that always confuse me a bit, so I'm not as current on their rules as I am on the others.
Well, instead of getting -1 to hit, they essentially get light cover.
Right.
Yeah,
And
they
that's-
used to have, I believe, out in the open, they have cover. But if they were in cover, they were -1 to hit.
Yep.
And then, that might be their super doctrine. The super doctrine was the tactical doctrine. They got +1 to hit and wound against characters.
Yes.
Correct. And that was the thing that
Made them snipers.
screwed
Yeah.
me over, especially as playing Sisters with certain large character models that just died.
Yeah.
But
And the cover
Yeah.
save thing is only 18 inches now, not 12 inches. So it's that much extra, sort of, 50% worse. So Raven Guard took a little bit of a beating, which is fine, Jason. But yeah. Dark Angels, I think, came out pretty good. Instead of getting a reroll 1s for not moving, because if you have a captain, you have that anyway, they are now +1 to hit, which is way better.
Yeah.
And it works in combat. That's a big
Yeah.
deal.
yeah, as
Yeah.
well as in combat, yeah.
And they got a bunch
it's,
of other cool stuff too, which is in the supplement. But yeah, Dark Angels came out well.
Yeah, because if you get charged, you always get +1 to hit because you did not move that play your turn. So it's pretty massive, actually.
Yeah, and pile in and consolidation also do
Don't
not count as movement,
Yeah, it's like so good. Yeah.
which is a big deal. Yeah, so that's pretty good. So yeah, a lot of the chapters have a lot of flair right now. Some of the hot chapters right now, you're seeing a lot of White Scars, Dark Angels, and Salamanders are still kind of decent as well.
Yeah, so they
You're
lost
seeing a
their.
lot as well.
They got their 1 reroll of a wound, but they lost their to hit, which maybe if you're rocking a bunch of flamers doesn't really matter. But
You don't care.
yeah, and
Well, that and the
and there's so many
rerolls and
reroll hits in the Marines. Yeah, I don't think that changes Salamanders too much.
Yeah, and they ignore essentially -1 AP.
So they also changed the Master Artisans to be like the new Salamanders rule. They changed Stealthy to like the nerfed Raven Guard. So that kind of Stealthy Master Artisans combo, maybe we won't see it anymore. But yeah, those two things were nerfed as well, which kind of let people nitpick the best parts of each chapter that they liked, and so nerfed in line.
Yeah, so you're moving into the Successor Chapters, and yeah, so they basically kept them in, which was a rumor that they wouldn't, and they also kept that Successor Chapters still kind of count as their parent chapter, which a lot of people, I guess the big rumor was that was going to go away, and that they would only be allowed generic Space Marine chapter tactics, but that's not at all what happened. And so as Darren said, yeah, when they went through in the Build Your Own chapter, which is the Successor Chapter traits, they kind of toned them down a little bit and made them a little bit less oppressive, as Francois would say.
Well, they also toned down the one.
Oh, we lost him. Oh,
But at the same time, they increased the range of flamer.
Yeah, long range marksman. Yeah.
oh, so yeah, so he was just talking about the additional range. They toned that down. Sorry, you broke up for a second there. Gotta love these thunderstorms coming through.
Yeah, it's been crazy today, like really crazy. So what do you guys think about, so obviously putting the, Space Wolves, Dark Angels, Blood Angels into the Marine book, like that kind of makes sense. How about Death Watch? What do you think about putting Death Watch in the Marine book?
I like it. Death Watch didn't have a lot that made them that unique as a book.
Yeah.
Their separate codex book was very light on units and a lot of samey, and they tried to make them different, but with the whole mixing of units and stuff like that. And I feel like if you really kind of read into the Death Watch, they are kind of their own, like they're kind of run like a normal chapter in a lot of ways with a lot of specialist stuff. So personally, I think it just looks better and it flows better. They're just another Marine choice.
And functionally, like, you're right. They're going to play a lot like Marines. They might have a couple of different rules, like these chapter tactics. Do they still get the mixing units where you have like an aggressor with a biker and a Terminator in one unit?
They do.
Okay, so that's their big. Yeah, that's their big thing, but I don't see that changing much. But like you said, it's a big difference between Grey Knights, which functionally the whole army is different between the weapons and how things work and psychic powers and whatever else. So that makes sense that they're going to be their own separate book. But yeah, like you said, I see it. I see it being cleaner having them together, and like whenever they update this book, everybody else is just going to end up being updated at the same time.
Yeah, from a game design standpoint, it makes a lot of sense because you just have to change the one entry into one book, and then everything updates at once, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things too where they don't have, like Death Watch didn't have a lot of variety. They played one way, so if the meta changed, the missions changed, the games changed, Death Watch would go from being fantastic as a book to nothing because they lack that depth of a book. Whereas when you have depth, you can change one or two units, and now you can essentially fight that new threat. Whereas, the less choices, the worse off you're. And I think you're seeing a lot with for your example, Grey Knights, is they only have so many units, and then they kind of run out of tricks, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool. So all in all, chapter tactics, successor chapter tactics. What do you guys kind of see as the best? If you had to build one right now, what's the best one?
White Scars.
White Scars.
Dark Angels.
Dark Angels. I think Dark Angels as well.
Okay, yeah.
Are we going just based on the chapter tactics or what we know of the supplements?
You could just do a little bit mix here. I don't care. Let's not be too rigid.
Okay, well, if I was going to say build for, if there was a GT tomorrow and somehow I can get an army together, probably Space Wolves. But if I went with my heart, be Iron Hands. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think hitting on twos is so powerful, and especially if you can sit still. Some of the, so you pay a premium for the reason I picked Dark Angels anyways, like you pay a premium for some of these tanks that hit on twos, right? So now you're essentially getting the advantage of hitting on twos with whirlwinds and things like that you're not paying a lot of points for. Now, they might not do a lot of damage, but I kind of like that element to it.
Well,
no, I agree. I like the heroic intervention because as you see, the control area of objectives is pretty large now, right? So sometimes it's not always possible to put your unit to cover the whole control area to make sure it's secure from somebody jumping on. Heroic intervention just gives you that insurance, right? If somebody tries to sneak a couple models on that objective, steal from you, you can heroically intervene and clear them off to maintain the control of that objective.
And how many games do you win by 5 points or lose by 5 points? So that one turn of clearing objective could win you games. Yeah.
Sure.
Cody there from the Hooded Goblin also is Space Wolves.
But they have weird pelts and they smell like wet dog.
But Cody and I also find like separately we won't build our list together and they'll be the same. Like I know for Berry Bash, when the list came out, him and I had like almost the same list somehow. So him and I think alike.
That's good. So that's about it for the successor chapters and chapter traits, if you want to look at those. Obviously, if you want to play what you want to play, take whatever you want. I think they have less of an impact now than maybe they did in the previous book. I think there's more of them are better. Like the kind of baseline is a lot more toned in. So you might be picking one that, might be slightly worse than another one, but you're not as far behind as the other Marine guys as you were maybe a few weeks ago.
Well, of all the Marine chapters, I think they're all viable. Like, there's no the power disparity is no longer as big as it was when it was just Iron Hands and Raven Guard. Like,
Correct.
They kind of all work now, except maybe our Imperial Fists.
You just really hating on the
I
yellow.
really
birds.
don't. I really
He's like,
don't
I
like
just
the
don't want to
yellow
paint
birds.
yellow ever, so I'll talk him down now. And I
Yeah,
don't
because
have
I'm painting white instead.
So next we got Chapter Command. This is one of the coolest things I think they added to the book. Is we kind of talked about it in our leak show. Is they took all of the various masters of the chapter, they call them, which is like company champions, ancient, apothecary, librarian, tech marines, chaplain, and captain, and they gave them a way to make them kind of the master. And so back in, I think it was third edition, they actually kind of sold kits that had like these masters of different tasks on the chapter and things like that. And it's really neat to kind of see them represented here in a way that's better, I guess, because it makes sense. Like, yeah, you have your average tech marines, but some people want to take like a master of the forge and they want to have a better tech marine, right? They're playing
Just in time for the release of the
Especially-
Primaries Tech Marine.
There you go. And the Primaries Chaplain, which is
Yeah,
gorgeous.
so like the
by
biggest
way.
change here is that instead of paying CP, now they pay points.
Yeah, points and power level, which is a big deal when you're talking about outflanking stuff and deep striking. But no. So yeah, they vary from 40 to 15 points that you upgrade on your units. So we'll kind of go through that. So instead of before having captain, CP, chapter master, so everybody goes from rerolling ones to rerolling everything, they've kind of changed it. Now the best part about these is that they've given them special abilities. They've given them custom relics and warlord traits and things like that. And things that they can choose from to make it more thematic and fluffy and kind of customizable. So what does the chapter master do, Francois?
Well, the chapter master is the one that changed the most radically, because it used to be that chapter master was, well, yeah, I'll be honest, too good. Chapter master used to be give full rerolls to everything around, which when you're throwing buckets of dice from units of aggressors or whatever quickly feels really, really unfun for like both players sometimes. And they did something I think elegant. Rather than nerf the chapter master into the ground, what they did was having him be upgraded by points, I think is a smart thing. But also now the chapter master gives the regular captain aura to core units around him, but then he can also pick one to give full rerolls to, which is still really, really powerful, don't get me wrong. But now it's not everything around the chapter master rerolls everything.
Yeah,
40 points. That's a decent chunk.
Yeah.
That's a lot. When you add that up with other changes that we're going to talk about, it makes a big difference over the course of the army. So go over to you, Nick. What's the Master of Sanctity big changes? Briefly.
Yeah, the Master of Sanctity. Basically, upgrading him gives him an additional litany. So yeah, he can recite, I think, 2 litanies at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then to get, so this is the thing, if I understand properly, and Francois is going to correct me, I know before he got the +1 or rerolls, but it seems like he only gets that, or he doesn't get to reroll that anymore unless you give him the Warlord trait, right?
So you can still make him a wise orator, but it works differently than it used to. So it used to be a reroll. Now it's a +1 to the chant, which mathematically is very close to the same. Like the odds of passing your litany on the 3 rerollable or on a 2 is very close. So yeah, that's the one difference. It's still really good. It's still basically, for me, if you're taking a chaplain, you should always upgrade him. Still.
But if I understand properly, if you want him to do that, you have to pay the points and now spend a stratagem, right, to give him Wise Orator?
Well, you have to give him the Warlord traits. You could do it either by having him be your Warlord or pay a CP to give him an extra Warlord trait.
Okay, so he comes with
Which
extra
is probably
cost
worth
as well.
it.
I would do that every single game. If you're taking a chaplain, you do that.
Since the command reroll doesn't reroll it anymore, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Next one I'll take is the Master of the Forge. And basically, instead of repairing D3 wounds, he repairs 3 wounds. And he has a couple other items. I don't think you'll ever see this guy on the tabletop, if I'm being honest. So we'll move on. Can you think of a time you'd want that, Francois? I don't think so, eh?
I mean, I guess if you're running Iron Hands Dreadnought heavy list, that could make sense.
Yeah, because you give him the Warlord trait, and then you get +1 in the strength and attacks of the Dreadnoughts if you're going for the combat.
Right.
But
I mean, so yes, I could imagine a situation where you'd want to take him, but it's pretty niche.
Yeah. So, Darren, you want to take the Chief Librarian?
Yeah, so not just Tiggy now, but Chief Librarians all get 3rd power and a 2nd deny, which is really good. And they have the options of giving themselves +1 to their test, which is also good, and increasing the deny to 24, which is good because most psychic heavy armies learn to play around 18-inch bubbles. But so you just throw a wrench a little bit into 24-inch bubbles, especially when a lot of their powers are 18 inches to cast. So get that extra 6 inches can make a big deal.
Well, the relic is the psychic hood. Psychic hood is up to 24, which I think is like what, a -1 to cast or something like that.
No, it's the psychic hood is a +1
to deny. Yeah.
Oh, +1 to deny. Okay,
I'm not sure that one is worth it, but it's an option.
Yeah, and if you want to make him your warlord, you can add 1 to psychic tests, which makes him more like Tigurius. But
yeah, so that if you're going to take him and you have a key power you really want to get off, that is definitely worth it.
For sure. And what's that key power? You mean null zone? Null zone? Yeah.
Well, or actually, what's it called now? A mental fortress, or the fortress one now is bunkers. Now it's a 5++ to everything around him, even non-core units. So you can give an invuln to your vehicles now. So say you wanted to have, I don't think playing castle or even moving castles is really the way to go in 9th edition, but if you wanted to play that playstyle, you put your librarian, you give him the +cast to make really sure you're going to get that key power off, and you give an invuln to everything around. It's definitely a valid strategy.
Yes, for sure. Now, next is I think one of the real winners of this book, and that would be the Apothecary. And I think we're on to Francois' turn. So you want to talk about you want to talk about the I guess the buff that nobody wanted, but it's here.
I'm actually kind of excited because I moved my Apothecary model to the top of my paint queue after I read those rules.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty cool. So they basically took most of the stuff that made the old Apothecary good if you upgraded it, and then made him better. It's kind of interesting. And fluff-wise, I kind of like it because otherwise you never see Apothecaries in Space Marine armies, but they're kind of an important part of the chapter, like the whole following the Battle Brothers around and getting the gene seed when they die and all that. Now you're going to see a lot of Apothecaries, I think. Because now he can give you a 6++, so a 6 up, feel no pain, in a bubble, which is already pretty good, especially if you're dealing with damage 2 weapons on your 2 wound models, damage 3 weapons on your 3 wound models, you throw that cheeky 6 and an entire cycle of fire has been wasted. It's actually more powerful than people think. But also, he can res models. Mm-hmm. And the Chief Apothecary, so it's a stratagem, but the Chief Apothecary does it
free.
For free or for 1 CP? I think it's for free. Otherwise, it'd be for 1 CP.
He gets it for 0, yeah.
He gets it for 0. And so you can just bring back a model.
Go for it.
But at full wounds. Yeah. And the way the rules are currently written, he can bring back an Invader ATV at 8 wounds.
Of course.
Ladies and
scratch because it's a biker.
Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind, though, this upgrade is going to set you back
15 points. Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's
one model. Like one model
Marine
comes back, you're good. You actually made more.
You also heal flat 3 wounds rather than D3, which can be pretty clutch if your characters get plinked off a little bit. 3 wounds.
And you can do that to 2 people, right?
I believe so.
Selfless healer.
Yeah.
That's gross. It's just gross.
Yeah. Yes, that's a big deal when you're talking about running that kind of bubble, lots of characters in the buff. Yeah, you're not getting sniped off. Everybody's coming back. You have somebody like Girly Man, if you can heal him, big deal. Yeah, big deal.
Definitely think that you're going to see a lot of Apothecaries around.
Yeah, you think that's one? Well, you can only have one chief, I believe, right?
Yes, you can only have one. Yeah.
And
then, you can only have one? Okay, then go.
Yeah, you can only have one chief of anything.
Of anything.
One chapter master.
Because the way they actually kind of started structuring it around the fluff, in that, there's only one chief apothecary and the rest are just normal apothecaries.
Not so 5 chapter masters high-fiving each other going into battle.
Yeah, you haven't been able to do that one for a while, but yeah, I know what you mean. And it's funny because certain armies. Well, that's one thing about this book that I thought was kind of strange is I believe you can take a chief, a chapter master, and Azrael in the same army. I know that's a supplement, but
so
did they
fix that? Specifically said for Ultramarines that's specific.
Thank God.
I don't know about
the name guys.
Else, but I know for Ultramarines they specifically said you can't have both Why am I
Like
blanking in the
you
name?
can't have
Thank you.
Calgar. Yeah.
Calgar and another chapter master.
But
you
you
could
shouldn't
have
be able to have either. You shouldn't be able to have either.
So, it's either Calgar or another chapter master.
Yeah, but so I guess what I was trying to say, which sounded really stupid now that I heard it, is I was thinking like if you're Ultramarines, you should only get Calgar. You should never get.
So
a
they've
chapter
actually
master.
addressed that in the little text blurb. They said you could play it as like an historical chapter master from the past,
God.
right, or the
yeah.
future.
Sad.
That's what GW said.
So I guess the next unit that really got a buff was the Chapter Ancient. You want to take that one, Nick?
The Chapter Ancient does everything. So literally, so the regular Ancient is that the within 6 somebody dies on a 4-up, they get to attack.
3-up, right?
Oh, it's 3-up. Lovely.
Okay.
Okay.
Did they change that?
4, but either way, you roll a dice and you
On something up, probably a 4, somebody gets to attack. So Chapter Ancient gains the Chapter Banner. So that means in your command phase, you can select a core Chapter unit within 6 inches until the start of the next command phase. Each time a model in that unit melee attack, he adds 1 to the attack's hit roll. So it's a 4-up. Okay. So anyways, so he gives the +1 to hit. Then he also has access to a Warlord trait that's an aura. Which is pretty intense. It gives chapter core units within 6 inches of him objective secure.
Crazy.
Yeah, we'll
Like
talk about that.
Blade Guard.
And everything is core,
Yeah, Blade
basically.
Guard.
So, yeah.
So
And all the infantry's core, yeah, and some of the bikes, most of the bikes.
him, the Apothecary, are just going to be following the Blade Guard and Impulsors down the road and just like going nuts. And then if they already have that, they count as an additional model. So if you're somebody that just wants to run a ton of not heavy intercessors, the assault intercessors, you get 10 on an objective. That's like having 20 models on there. So that's pretty cool. And then the Relic of the Fallen, or the Pennant of the Fallen. Each time a friendly model is destroyed and makes attacks as a result, it bears Astartes banner. So it's like if they're killed and they come back, they make 2 attacks with 1 of the melee weapons instead of 1.
That one's a pass, I think, but still.
Yeah,
and that's a relic. Yeah,
it's a relic, so it doesn't get that. But depending on the build, I don't know if it's an auto take for the Warlord trait. Depending on your build, it's definitely a good option for sure.
There's going to be a lot of Marine armies running with like 3 or 4 Warlord traits.
Yeah, they're not going to start with a lot of CP.
Well, it's 1 CP every time you
they
give
don't have to
Warlord
spend the
trait.
CP on their masters now, so they have the CP to spend on extra Warlord traits.
But
yeah, it's kind of a moot point.
Darren. Okay, hold on. So, like, say you do your chapter master, that's 40 points. They have, they're going to have an apothecary, that's 15. So, what are 55? And then, are they going to have a chaplain?
Yeah.
Yes.
80 points. So that's 80 points before. So that's 80 points already. So now if they want that on top of what the cost of those models are already. So then if they want the ancient as well, it's another 100 points for all of those guys. It's an extra 100 points on top of the cost of those characters, right? So
my heart
think
bleeds,
you don't take the
like
chapter
seriously, my
master.
heart bleeds. But my point is that they have way more CP to do other things now because they don't have to spend it all on upgrading those dudes.
And I agree with Chris. I don't think you take the chapter master anymore.
No. You don't need them. And 1 unit rerolling to hit is great, but it's not worth the points cost for rerolling ones, and especially with a lot of, I guess, how powerful the units are and how kind of individual a lot of them operate. I don't think you really need the reroll ones.
Especially, I guess I'm coming at it from the White Scars angle, but especially if you have access to Kusara Khan, who gives them reroll 1s, and a Chapter Ancient, who gives them +1 to hit, you're hitting on 2s rerolling 1s. You don't need the Chapter Master.
Yeah, you don't need it. So that's kind of my thoughts. The next one's the Chapter Champion, who will probably remain on your shelf.
He's fluffy and looks cool, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess that's the real winners. I think Nick started hitting on that, and I do agree with him. I think if you really want to know what are people going to take or what's good, you're probably not. Chapter Masters might happen. You're never probably going to see the Master of the Forge. Master of Sanctity is very situational. Sorry, not the Master of Sanctuary. Yeah, Chief Librarian is probably very situational. Master of Sanctuary, you're probably going to see in majority of the lists, in my opinion. And then the Apothecary for sure, and the Ancient. So a lot of my lists that I've been kind of writing are Sanctity, Apothecary, Ancient. That's it.
Yeah.
Just for the points, right? You can't afford everything, as you said.
So since
What do you?
sorry,
Oh, go ahead, Darren.
I was gonna segue onto another topic. So
Sure, if you want to, we'll do that.
well, since we were talking about people giving off buffs and auras, what do you guys think of the whole core thing? Now that we know how much of the Marine Army is still core.
So that's. I don't want to. I don't want to kind of diss that, but I was shocked at how much of it is core. And so for people that maybe are tuning in for the first time, core is just a new keyword that's been added to every unit, and most rerolls only affect core
and
units.
characters,
and not
now.
just rerolls, litanies,
core
like
and characters,
Yeah.
and they specifically said that characters would not be able to buff themselves, and now all their their stuff is
that varies by ability.
But there's so many of them that have core or character.
Yeah, but even that point, so and there's going to be abilities that have vehicle, right? So it buffs vehicles. Like it kind of is what it is. I think it was a way for them to manage having a buffs that don't essentially buff your whole army, for lack of a better term, but it allows them to basically have one keyword to some of the edge units, like the vehicles, the transports, and things that maybe they never wanted to include into these buff circles, but they got kind of forced into doing it because otherwise they'd have to list a million units, right? And then you'd have all these keyword issues where you'd have, they try to do a little bit with things like infantry, but then you have certain armies where when you just say, hey, this aura only affects infantry, well, it takes out a lot of their core units because maybe they have bikes or other things. And then it's like, is jump infantry? Well, it is, but there's a lot of weird things with that. And I think this core just cleans it up.
It's just a big contrast between how many units got core in the Marine book versus how many units got core in the Necron book, which was 4 or something like that.
I think we're going to need to see results over the next couple months if that really made a difference. I think you're right. I think comparing against the Necrons is a bit of a shock because the Necrons have something like 5 or 4 units, right? They have the Lich Guard, the Warriors, Immortals, Tomb Blades.
That's it.
And that might be it, right? That got core, and whereas Space Marines seem to have everything. But they've also kind of written themselves a bit in between like a rock and a hard place because they've kept all the Firstborn Marines and all the Primaris, right? So if they want these models to be kind of equally valid or equally considered in somebody's list, they can't start excluding, say, Firstborn or Primaris, right? They can't give an overwhelming advantage to one or the other. They kind of got to make them both appealing, which is kind of inflating that sense of core. But like this book is already fairly inflated to begin with, outside of this core discussion.
That was my point going to be that the amount of core units doesn't matter at all. The Marine book just has the depth and variety of units unlike any other chapter any other book except for maybe Chaos. But Chaos as a whole might have that.
Yeah, as a whole like super faction.
Because it's like 5 books, but this was also not that long ago 4 or 5 books now into one.
But who knows? You're absolutely right. Maybe the next Chaos book is going to be a Space Marine book where you get all your legions as those kind of chapter tactics with the doctrines, super doctrines, and then Thousand Sons and Death Guard are going to be their own supplement attached to the Chaos book. Who knows? That could be it as well.
Well, Death Guard is its own book. They've already pre-ordered it. So.
Oh, well, yeah, there you go. You're right.
So who knows? So let's get back onto the...
To get back to Space Marine cores, though, I will say that it does give them a lot of design space to work with, and they've already made some key changes. For instance, Centurions, though they are infantry, are not core.
That's the one I liked the most because those things have way too many guns and abilities to be getting
Frick those things, and they don't get bolter discipline, and screw the Centurions, man. Yeah, and those things can't transhuman anymore, so yeah, screw Centurions. Good riddance. Ugly ass models too.
Yeah, so I guess we'll move on to stratagems, and now for the most part, stratagems kind of stayed the same. There's a few key changes on that. So what are some of the key changes?
So they categorized everything, first of all.
But does that mean
it doesn't really mean anything, but it's kind of interesting that they've done that. Maybe it helps with people figuring out when exactly they're supposed to use them. I think that's kind of one of the reasons why they did that. So this category, I can't remember what it's called, is all for your pre-game stuff. And like this stuff is all like, command phase stuff or something. So maybe that helps a little bit. And
I think it helps.
Yeah.
So do you want to start with the big one that changed? The
Yeah,
big
there's-
end, the elephant?
I mean, there's two that
There's some
I'm
big
really,
ones that changed for me. It's transhuman, first of all, affecting only Primaris now, which, I mean, everything's freaking Primaris anyway, so that probably doesn't matter. And also for 5 men, it's only 1 CP, which is a big deal. So that's one change that I noticed right away. Aspect scan.
And otherwise it costs 2.
Yeah.
So yes, now transhuman is twice the price for most people.
Yep.
Well, it was 2.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah,
Okay,
it was
never
2
mind. My
CP.
bad.
Now it's only 1.
So it's actually cheaper
You're
for
right.
5-man
It's
units,
cheaper
which you're going
now.
to see a
Yeah.
lot of.
Yeah. And
But
Yeah, but you're
still
starting
use-
to see lists like 10 assault intercessors and
Oh,
stuff
sure,
like that.
but like 5 blade guard, 5 aggressors.
Yeah, no, that's true.
it
yeah.
actually carries on with a trend that they've been doing in a lot of books, mine included, where it gets more expensive the more people it affects. So, which is fine.
Which is better. Yeah, it is better. So one thing about this though, did it really change for the custodies, or is it going to? No, right? They're going to get it.
Well, we
still.
don't know.
So my prediction is they will, and the reason I'm saying that is because theirs isn't called transhuman.
That's true. Never mind. You're right. It's not called transhuman.
We all call it transhuman, but it's actually called something
Genetic
like super
alchemy.
genetic
Yeah.
alchemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other
Yeah,
big
custodies.
Yeah. The other big change is and we won't, since we're not talking about supplements, we won't talk about Inner Circle getting it automatically, but permanently on all the time. But anyway,
Well, we can leave your bitterness. Yeah, we're sick of it all the time. Yeah, you can talk about it, but that's it. There's nothing else to say. Yeah.
yeah. The other big change I think is Aspect Scan being moved to the end of the movement phase. So now,
That's a buff, dude. That's a buff.
well, I think it is a buff. It's a double edge. So if you're trying to drop in on an Aspect Scan, you can, you don't have to worry about if you drop your character first, it gets picked off or whatever. But it is a buff in that. So you have to declare it at the end of the movement phase now, right? So you can choose who you want to shoot, basically. Yeah.
There's also no longer a penalty, right?
Yeah, and there's no penalty.
How is it clarified if it works like with regards to the drop pod and people coming out of drop pod?
So a
let's not get
single
into that.
eligible enemy unit that was set up as reinforcements this turn, any model that was off the board and comes on as reinforcements.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I like that it specifies movement phase as well, because you get a lot of abilities with old, rules writing that happen, say, in the psychic phase or in other phases that they teleport, and then there's always a question, can they be Aspect Scan? But now that if it's a movement phase, they can't be, which is nice.
Yeah, but the one I want to talk about, the one that I think is the most important change in the way that it works, is the fight twice stratagem. Only works on assault intercessors now. That's a big deal to me. I mean, I don't mind because I have a lot.
It's not a big deal to you,
intercessors.
obviously, but it's a big
But
deal to a lot of people.
it's actually a big nerf to a lot of Space Marine combat armies, because yes, it was expensive, 3 CP to fight your unit twice, but it's such a powerful tool. And now you can't do it on Blade Guard anymore. It has to be Assault Intercessors. Like, I killed a Knight at our last RTT by double fighting my Blade Guard, and that was a clutch moment in the game. Can't do that anymore.
And I don't think you can.
Let's be frank, though. Blade Guard kill everything they touch anyway.
Well, now that I'm going to be running 5 of them instead of 3, then yes.
Yeah. let's be brief. They don't need it.
And I think you can't do it if you've already. What's it say?
No. That's the fight on death.
Oh, that's the fight on death. Sorry. All I know is Smash Captains are totally gone. No more 3-up invuln. Only 1 per detachment. The fight on death. The fight at the all that extra fighting stuff. Smash Captains are done.
They're not done. They still have their role. You just won't see a lot of them. Like, they're not done. I think they still have that play, right? A single model that can move fast, kill things. Maybe a Death Watch one might still be valid.
Let's just
Maybe
say
not.
I'm not going to miss the days of every Imperium army having 3 Blood Angel Smash Captains.
Yeah, that's the thing. You won't see 3. They don't have a play. And mind you haven't been seeing 3 in this edition anyway, but back last edition, yeah, they were a real thing. Any of the other ones you want to cover there, Francois?
I think that's those are the big ones for me. I mean,
You missed one.
Did I miss one?
Missing? What's missing?
I have a
don't
big
know.
one. I have a big one.
What's the big one that's missing? comes in a drop pod.
Oh
It
yeah,
does
Grav
something.
Amp, of course.
Grav
Gravitic
Amp's
amplification
gone.
is gone. It's
Thank you.
I already deleted
you.
it from my mind because I
That
was so
stratagem
happy
was
that thing
too
was
good
gone.
for 1 CP. It should have been 2 CP for the 2 effects, but
It should never have existed. It's just
It will be fun actually at the end of this cast to all of us like take a turn to speculate on the last time we played a Marine army and how just that would have changed that game based on these rules. Because like in the couple minutes that we've been talking, it's completely changed how my last experience with Marines would have went.
it wouldn't change mine that much.
Those Grav Amps re-rolling, with the re-rolls, they actually will kill a full tank easily, or maybe 2.
Easy, yeah.
But without it, now it's a risk for that player. He's not guaranteed the pop, right?
now the math no longer favors Grav anymore. You might as well take multi-meltas or a different unit altogether.
Meltas. Yeah.
8-shot multi-meltas, done.
Another one that I thought was kind of neat. I don't think it's overpowered, but it is going to make getting rid of Gravis units a lot more frustrating, is the unyielding in the face of the foe. So for a CP, they basically get the Thousand Suns rubric rule, where you add 1 to the armor save if it's a damage 1 weapon. I take that personally, so I took that personally.
Oh.
So that now Eradicators,
Yeah, that's a good one.
if you're trying to get rid of them with your plinky shots, they're just like, pop, nope, I'm 2 up, toughness 5. Thanks for coming out.
And that's why you put 15 multi-meltas into them.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I got one because
go
it will probably affect me when my book comes out, is the death of the Grav tank. So all the Gravitic tanks have lost fly, number 1.
Wow, you're getting ahead. We're in the
No, but I'm getting to stratagem.
Sorry.
So they lost fly, and they lost the -2 to charge rules, and which is good because impulsors suck. But my Grav tanks will probably lose that, and then that has become a stratagem now.
Cares.
So
Nobody cares.
the Grav Pulse or whatever has become a stratagem now, which either gives you -2 to charge or lets you fall back and shoot. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so that change in how those floaty tanks work is something for me, because I think is going to happen to my tanks. So.
Fine. Since you started it, we should finish the whole no fly on tanks thing. That's a huge nerf
for impulsors.
to repulsors, impulsors, the repulsor, like all those flying tanks, because you can no longer jump them on top of ruins. You can no longer get that kind of vantage point where now people can't charge you up walls because they're -2 and it's really far away. That's a big deal.
Well, or even beyond that, hiding behind a ruin and then just moving in front of it because you don't care because you fly. Now you have to go around.
Yeah, exactly.
And your own people.
Yeah, so it adds a couple inches to that move, which, those things add up over the course of a game. And now maybe you're not hitting my back edge unit turn 3, you're hitting it turn 4, right?
Yeah,
Which is
it can't
big
charge
difference.
over, your own units. The impulsor also lost 4 up to a 5 up, which is big.
We're not there. Now you're getting
But yeah,
crazy
so the
with
loss
getting
of
ahead.
fly is, losing fly is a big deal. So those fast moving tanks losing fly is a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, that strat's going to be clutch if you do take those units, but at least it's a strat and you can plan around it, which is the best part. I can be, instead of just everybody getting it, I can be like, hey, you have no CP left, I'm going to go for that charge, right? Or I don't need to get as close, maybe. So it's pretty big deal. Next is the Warlord Traits. Did anything really go crazy with these? Change in your opinion for as well?
Nothing really jumped out at me when I was looking at them.
Yeah, same thing. I couldn't find much, and I was like, we don't really want to spend too much time on them, but yeah.
Your usual ones are still good, like the Emperor's Champion one, the one that gives you extra attacks, like stuff like that. But nothing really stand out there.
Nothing crazy that changes the way your armies work, like maybe the characters we saw earlier, making things obsec and stuff. There's nothing that crazy. So now you can just buy certain buffs earlier in the codex, and you don't need to worry about that.
An Iron Hands Master of the Forge with the Warlord trait will basically repair Dreadnought for 4 wounds every turn, so that's pretty decent. Like, if you have a Levy Dread, that's not bad, Yeah,
it's not bad, but I think you can also just spam 6-7 dreads now, right, with him?
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking pretty freaking good. Relics are the same kind of boat. There's nothing crazy. They kept the Teeth of Terror, which was, but It is what it is. So I guess we already kind of talked about, I guess, the big spell changes. The spells you're going to see is probably most likely Null Zone for specific kind of toolbox. The problem with this edition, though, is you have to pick your psychic powers prior to the tournament or prior to the game. So you shouldn't be able to tool for your opponent. So even taking a librarian with Null Zone, you're kind of banking on needing it.
There's a lot of
points
in the game. There's a lot of invulns.
But also, was Null Zone like this before, where it turns off everyone's invul?
Yep. Within 6,
Okay.
That's short range, yeah.
Okay, so that guy has to stay away from his blade guard.
And the problem is with the 6-inch Null Zone is the only way to really get the librarian to the opponent is in something like an Impulsor, Rhino, Repulsor type thing, depending on who you take, or a jump pack. But it's like, things like drop pods don't work for that. If it was like 9 inches or 12 inches, then you could just drop pod, turn it off. But
that librarian is danger close at 6 inches.
He's very danger close, and that's part of the reason why I didn't put him in any of my early lists, because of that. Even though you'd love him, like your chicken would just die if you went near it. Turn off your invul, big chicken, 3-up invul's gone.
Yeah.
So, and then that was think about it for that.
Well, the big winner I've already talked about is the Psychic Fortress, the 5-up invuln in an aura, like 6 inches.
Exactly. So, other than that, you're kind of those are the powers you're going to see.
You're going to see the chapter-specific disciplines more still, I think. If you want to bring a librarian, it's usually for something specific to your supplement librarian's discipline.
Yeah, so that might change. Obviously, the opinion might change as you go to a certain chapter.
Speaking of aura, what do you guys think of certain auras having the bracket aura word next to it now?
I like that a lot because that was there was abilities that turned off auras.
And then you weren't sure what were auras.
What's an aura? Yeah, because they're not actually a thing in the game, right? So
define
and
aura.
And it causes a lot of confusion. And because I know going to Berry Bash, I was considering actually taking Night Lords because there was some key auras, like the Tau. Like, was the Tau shield drone thing an aura? Can you turn that off? And there's debates going back and forth. Now it specifically says aura, which it's great.
Yeah, it makes the AdMech a lot happier, right? And they turn off your auras with their planes. It's just crazy. Yeah, I'm going to move 60 inches and turn off your aura, and that unit's dead. Thank you, AdMech. Any of the litanies of battle change?
Yes. There's one is now +1 to wound. I forget the name now, but that's a pretty big deal. Like +1 to wound is really strong.
Yeah,
and that stacks really well with con, right? And blade guards, isn't it? Or...
Well, so you can't stack.
Oh, you can't stack it.
Twice,
that's right. Yeah.
So I would still be using for White Scars the White Scar specific litany, which, as I understand it, is still valid. There's a bit of confusion as to what was invalidated, but they updated the fact for Faith and Fury on the same day as they updated everything else, and so my understanding is that those still work. So you'd still want, for White Scars anyway, to take the reroll wounds and a con with the +1 to wound. But for any other close combat oriented army you want to build with Space Marines, that +1 to wound is a buff that you can't get anywhere else. It's really strong.
Yeah, +1 to wound is a big deal.
Very good.
I find. Yeah, because I have a +1 to wound strat in close combat, and that makes a huge difference.
So good. Yeah, so good.
Well, every Chaos player will tell you their favorite stratagem is Veterans of Long War.
Yep, which is probably going to disappear because that Long War is over.
Preservation of Rage. That's the one.
But we're still veterans of it.
The rest stay the same. You still have your +2 to charge and stuff like that.
Yep, so I guess we can go on to kind of the actual data sheets now. We're going to skip through the majority. You want me to go back?
Yeah. There's another very important thing that this book brought out that's going to be controversial, possibly, depending on how it works out. Is the codex specific secondaries. You think they're all terrible?
I think these three are, yeah.
Well,
we can talk about it. Prove me wrong.
Yeah, let's talk about it. What if you will allow them or not? That's the real discussion.
So I think you should allow them. I think it's a part of the game. Now, it does feel unfair for the Marines because they're the only book with them, and then of course the Necrons. So now you're looking at it, well, these two books have an advantage, and let's say there was one in there that you get 15 points really easily. I just think that my opinion is a lot of the rulebook ones, you can just outscore these ones specifically. But that doesn't mean that there won't be a book that comes out where these are broken. So
There's one I think that's playable, but there's also one that's basically so stupid no one should ever take it. Like there's one where you have to kill one unit in a unit in the right phase, and basically it works out that you need to kill 5 units in each doctrine to max it out. It's literally impossible. I don't know what they were thinking with that one. But the one where you get a point for being in the middle, a point for not falling back, or a point for not like failing a morale test and stuff like that. I mean, that one you're probably going to get like your 10 to 12 points, which is the sweet spot.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you can get almost easily your 15 points.
I don't know about 15, but it's like that one's not bad. The thing you have to think about though is which category did they put them in, and what other secondary does it prevents you from taking. And offhand, I don't remember which ones conflict. But you have to look at that.
Yeah, like they're all situational, right? Like, so you might play a certain opponent, like even that shock tactics one. Like if you hold victory points at the end of a battle round that you take from your opponent, like that could matter, right? Like you could easily score that a couple times a game, but I just think there's more stable ones in the rule book, right? That's like I'm guaranteed 10 and I could maybe get 15, a little bit easier. I think it's a really good concept because every army should be distinctly different. And so this should kind of work to those strengths. But when you read these in the Space Marine Codex, do they sound like they're Marine specific, or do they just sound like 3 secondaries thrown in?
Yeah, it's just like 3 secondaries.
What's the Marine like? What in these caters to the Marines? Like, what's the thing that they do well that this caters to?
I like gameplay wise. I've played against, so I haven't played with, but at least fluff wise, I really did appreciate the Oaths of Moment. One, just because like I read the first 3 books of the Horus Heresy again. There's a scene where Horus is trying to prove like his majesty to everybody, but also while being humble, and he takes a knee in front of his group, his Mournivel, right? And he asks them for his oath of moment, where he's like pledging what he's going to do during the battle, and they take that oath. And I thought that was pretty fluffy, actually, that the Space Marines can choose oaths of moment, that, you're pledging what you're going to do this battle, and that you have to accomplish that. I don't know. I honestly thought that was pretty cool. And also, they are kind of doing what you would expect Space Marines to do, like Oath of Honor. You don't want them to fail morale test, or if you get into a combat, you may feel like it's more advantageous for you to fall back out of that combat to go do something else, but you're being rewarded for staying in that combat, for fighting to the bitter end, like a Space Marine would. Or like Oath of Duty, you want to take the center of the battlefield. That's them, establishing.
I'll give you that one from the fluff point of view, but in my experience, anything that says you should not fall back is probably not a good idea, because usually you want to get out and do that mission. But anyway, I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one.
It's kind of like the cards that you used to get. You had 6 cards that were like just for your own faction for the Maelstrom cards. So it's just kind of like a replacement for that, since we don't have cards anymore. And those were always disallowed, right? Like I don't know any tournament that allowed you to take.
So some allowed them, but most tournaments didn't use cards because the ITC kind of took prevalence in the last couple editions, and their mission format didn't use it. But yeah.
Well, so the Space Marine ones are fine, I guess. So I wouldn't see any problem with allowing them. But there is potential for GW to do what GW tends to do, and just not expect that one might be broken down the line. Like, so you might end up with a book that has a secondary that is just so easy that it's always 15 points, and then that becomes an issue.
Move a unit for 2 points.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, just kill an enemy unit, you get 1 point or something like that. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, kill
some
points.
Armies. Kill points, right? That'd be like, oh, that's what you got to do anyway. So I guess we'll go through. So they have the standard HQ choices. Primaries Captain, relatively unchanged. We talked about the upgrades earlier. Regular Captain, we have Captain in Phobos armor. We have Captain in Gravis armor. We have Captain in Terminator armor.
We should just skip to the big changes.
There are more Space Marine Captain entries in this codex than there are Harlequin units in their codex.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I was trying to drag it out because there's a shit ton of captains in this book, and they're all different. Lieutenant unchanged, Lieutenant. So the first new unit is the Primaries Chaplain.
Yes. Well, the Primaries Chaplain on bike. The Primaries
On
Chaplain
bike.
existed previously.
Existed before, but so we got the Primaries Chaplain and the Primaries Chaplain on bike, and basically they're basically a chaplain, more wounds, a little bit
Which
better.
is interesting because they just spent the whole last edition getting things off bikes. And now they've released a model on bike again. Like literally the Raven Wing had all the biker characters and they're all gone. And now we have a new biker character again.
But I think that's a different reason they're gone. I think a lot of the old bike characters were removed because
No
of the
models.
models were no longer sold
Yeah.
or were never sold. Like that chaplain on a bike, the regular one, that's a really old model. That's from 3rd edition, right? And it came and it was like available and not available. So,
Well, like a lot of Chaos Sorcerers on bikes disappeared too, and I don't know if they ever had a model. Like I had a bunch converted, but I don't know if they ever had a model either.
So,
Yep.
So who knows? When the Dark Angels supplement comes out, maybe Dark Angels players can be hopeful for a return of some of their biker characters, new models. That would be cool.
if they
Well,
made new models, yeah. But
This chaplain on bike can get the Ravenwing keyword if you play him in a Dark Angels army.
Yeah.
correct.
But it's not an interrogator.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. That could be an upgrade.
Switch
they could
the
add
head.
an upgrade.
Yeah, like a
Yeah,
like a chapter master upgrade thing.
Yeah, just exactly like they did for this. Yeah, Interrogator
Yeah,
Chaplain.
we just need a Libby on bike. That's what we need.
I don't know if it'd be pretty hard to ride a bike, cast a psychic power at the same time, holding a force sword and a pistol. I think that's a bit extreme. The next new unit was the Primaris Tech Marine, and he's just basically a Tech Marine with an additional wound, and he's Primaris. So I kind of like that. That you kind of have an incentive to take both, like or one or the other. Like it doesn't. It's not like they brought him out and he's just so much better that he changes the game. The old one has a few more options because obviously the old style is the kits came with multiple weapons and the new ones come kind of one model, so you don't get as many options with the Primaris one, but it's kind of neat. You can choose either or, and I don't think you're going to be let down by the decision, personally, which is great. So then we get on to kind of my biggest disappointment, heavy intercessors or troops and
Okay.
core.
Why is that a disappointment?
Why are they
bricks
troops?
of 10.
Well, I mean, the heavy intercessors, I was reading maths that someone else did, so it's not my maths, but someone was doing maths, and point per point, they're a little bit more durable than regular intercessor, point for point, and they do a little bit less damage, point for point. So they seem fine to me. Like it's just an extra option.
It gives you another troop choice.
Yeah, they need lots of extra.
And they look really good. I want to buy some just because I like the way they look now.
Yeah, I think they can come in units of 10. So that's
Yeah, they
30
can.
wounds.
Same as intercessors.
Yeah, it's gonna be difficult.
Yeah, but point for point, it's not. It's just a little bit harder to kill in the same point amount of regular intercessors, and they do a little bit less damage. Like
Yeah, stick them next to Azrael, give them the feel no pain, -1 to hit.
Yeah, but that's true. A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next change was the Incursor squads. So they
Yeah.
changed. They used to be able to drop a mine. You'd place it on an objective or somewhere you want. And anytime somebody came within range of it, it would do D3 mortal wounds. Now they changed it. So basically, once per battle, when you charge them, you take the hits instead. So it's kind of different. I think this is actually really strong. It's really nice to have things screening your army that do mortal wounds when they get charged, depending on what's coming in at them. The old one was pretty good, though, being able to leave those mines on objectives. So I'm not really sure this made them better
My
or
bold
worse.
prediction is that no one will buy the mine upgrade, just like no one used to buy the mine upgrade. It's just going to stay off the field.
Well, if you're taking incursors, wouldn't you buy the mine upgrade?
No,
Or else
no, you
just
you,
take
you
a
take
different-
incursors because you want forward deployed troops that are cheaper than infiltrators. That's why you take incursors.
But isn't the extra value of an infiltrator worth it?
It depends. So if I have an ultramarine list where I run 2 infiltrators, 1 incursor, and it's purely because the points weren't fitting. Like you save that clutch, I think it's 15 or 20 points, and sometimes in some lists you're like, well, that 20 points I really need, and I would like to have 3 forward deploying units, but really I only need 2 of them with the deny bubble. So
I'll give it to you for that. Correct. A lot of my initial lists start with 3 infiltrators, just because of the fact that being able to screen out Nurglings and a lot of other things is just such a big deal
And
right
scouts
now.
are dead.
2 of them already screen a massive amount of the board, though.
Correct. So you take a
And
tactical squad or
scouts
something
are
like that.
basically done.
I have 2 units of infiltrators, and I have no incursors, so that's probably why too.
See, I have 20 incursors and 40 infiltrators.
So you don't care. Yeah. Next one is the tactical squads. They went up to 2 wounds, which was as predicted. They did get a points hike though because of that. A little, not a hike, a little bit, but it makes sense. So now they actually could be viable as your third cheap troop option if you only want 2 units to kind of go forward, as opposed to the 3. They're a little bit cheaper than incursors. So
you can stick a cheeky last cannon in it if you have the points, and they can still like plink some wounds from a distance.
So basically, they're the same as intercessors.
With more options.
Yeah, like they're the same, like T4, 2 wounds, 3 up save.
Fewer attacks.
Yeah. So in terms of using them
they
as
can't
like
be
objective holders.
Transhuman.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're fine if you already own them. But if you're building a new Marine army, I would not.
Don't go buy tactical Marines.
yeah, but if you're like a normal 40k player and you have 70, 80, 90 of these in your closet,
now you don't have to feel bad that you're actually playing with
proxy them as intercessors.
Well, I don't think Francois is wrong. Like, we're in a pandemic, so we're not going to see 1,000 iterations of Space Marines. We're going to see only like hundreds. But I think there's maybe going to be value to the tactical squads being able, if they're 10-man, to have a heavy weapon and a special weapon. Right? It's those plinky las cannons. Like if you have 3 tactical squads, it's 3 extra las cannons you can bring just around. Where somebody has
combat squad them too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you can combat even better. So now you have 6 5-man, 2 wound each units, 3 with las cannons, and the other 3 with plasma guns. Because you can have a special weapon.
Yeah.
I just don't think you'll see that because, like, infiltrators to me, that 12-inch bubble is just so good.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Against so many, and there are games you're going to play where that doesn't hurt you at all. But when you're playing against orcs, you're playing against a lot of the chaos builds. Those guys are game changers, just game changers. Even other Marines. So we'll move on to elites because you'll notice that something was just missing in troops.
Yeah.
So the first kind of big change is scout squads are now elites. I'm okay with that.
I love that.
Which is kind of funny. Fluff-wise, it's hilarious because the scouts are supposed to be like kind of the initiates. But now in the book, they're elites.
But it makes sense if you look at it from troops are like the battle line. They should make up the bulk of your army in the front. And the scouts, when you read a lot of the fluff, there's like a few of them out there, but they don't really – they make a few cameos, it feels like, but they're never a main part of it.
Yeah.
This is a cool change because the ultimate thing to do, and Francois kind of alluded to that, is you'll take like 2 of the more expensive infiltrator squads, then you throw in that third troop as like the cheapest troop, which is the scouts back in the old book. Now, that kind of eliminates that. Like I've played against a lot of Marine armies with 3 troops, 3 scout squads. They scout up, they cover their board. Now you're essentially removing that, and all their troops cost more. So you add in the point upgrades of the characters, like the Apothecary, the Ancient, and whatever, Chapter Master, whatever you want to take, plus the extra 50, 60 points that you have to spend instead of scouts to get the same thing moving forward and doing work. You're essentially taking a 20% points hike on that army.
It's huge.
It's a big deal. And I actually think this almost makes scouts
unplayable.
Almost. There's one reason you would take them, and that's for the land speeder to get the range, maybe get certain objectives late game. But for the most part, I think they might be unplayable.
Yeah, and even those cases where you can see them be helpful, like for instance with White Scars, they have this strat where they can disembark at the end of the movement, so you can throw the land speeder, disembark, go into an objective. Even then, it's still an extra tax because now you have to buy other troop units to fill your battalion that you're using. So
and they're not OBSEC.
You're not exactly. They're not
and
OBSEC
not
anymore.
OBSEC.
So you're not going to. Yeah. You're not going to see a lot of.
And if you don't play the battalion, you only have 2 elite slots for patrol. So, yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, those models were so ugly. I'm glad they're gone. Like my Space Marines cards are actually Necromunda Palatine Enforcers that I'm using as scout models because the actual scouts just look so bad.
Well, those Enforcers look amazing too. And it's funny because I actually built 2 squads of scouts during quarantine a few months, like a long time ago when I built all my Dark Angel stuff. And when you pull out the scout sprues, they're like bits with like centimeters of gaps around them because they're so sparsely. It's like it was like going down memory lane. It was kind of hilarious just how like open the sprues
Yeah.
with. So next we have the, Primaris, Apothecary, standard stuff, Ancient, Primaris, Blade Guard, Ancient. Anything worth talking about there? Probably
Storm
not.
Shield change is the only thing.
You would. The
But that was
Blade Guard
army
Ancient-
wide.
So the Blade Guard Ancient is kind of pointless now because of the changes to the actual chapter Ancient. You'd pretty much always want to take him over the Blade Guard Ancient because he's only like 5 points more.
Yeah.
Yep, correct. And that's why I kind of think, they add, they're pretty much the same. The next new unit is the Veteran Intercessor Squad, which is cool that they added this because it was like traditionally Marines always had that first company unit. Now, I know not all veterans are in the first company, but it kind of gave that fluffy thing where you have this better version of like a tactical squad or in the form of a veteran squad. And so this is cool. Now, I do think it's a book too early. I think if you're following along the fluff, there really shouldn't be too many veteran intercessors, right? It's a little bit.
Haven't they moved the story like a couple hundred years forward? So, I mean,
But they already said you can
But
make your own
takes-
timeline and your own chapter master, so who cares?
yeah.
It takes 500 years to be a veteran. We all know.
Well,
No, I'm just
I
kidding.
don't know.
I
Like,
don't
you
think
look at
you're
the
actually
horde-
going to see these on the tabletop anyway. I don't think people are actually going to buy them because it's a so important elite slot, and you still need to take your troops. So I personally, I can't see a scenario where getting that extra attack is worth it for
It's
that
not.
slot, for that cost. Like, you're not going to see them.
But how
So-
often, like, you do see veterans, but veterans were not the most popular choice going back many editions. They were good in a drop pod because they got the extra hit, and with Cadro Pantor, who gave them an additional, another attack, then they become a bit crazy. But nowadays, yeah, you're right. I don't think people will take them. It's neat that the option's there because you could say, okay, this is one of those Ultima founding Primaris chapters, and this is the first company guys. And so if you want to do maybe a fluff point of view, you could have the first company veterans and paint them with the first company symbols, and it's pretty cool.
I think it makes sense because if you look at the Horus Heresy, they basically start 200-ish years after the Crusade, and a lot of those guys are being described as grizzled veterans. You know what I mean? And they have like Abaddon leading the first company, right, and whatever else. So I don't know. I think it kind of makes sense.
So you think 200 years is enough? I was just kind of trying to be funny. It wasn't really. I'll admit it. Anyway, next one is Blade Guard Veterans. Now they're generally the same, except they went up to 6.
5. Well, to 6. I say 5 because people are always going to run them in 5s, but they went up to 6.
Yeah, and 5s for a couple reasons. 5 fit in an impulsor with a character, and then you don't get blasted.
Yeah, blasted, and coherency is actually an issue as well because you don't have to worry about keeping them clumped together. You actually get a bigger footprint with 5 than you do with 6, and that's the next point. Your transhuman is now 1 CP instead of 2. So that 6th guy, you have to give up a lot to bring him in.
Did they always get Neo-Volkite pistols?
No,
that's new, but that's because the multi-part kit has the Neo-Volkite pistol. But also, here's a tip for anyone who wants more Blade Guard, like I do. If you have the Indomitus box set, there's an Indomitus lieutenant that looks a lot like a Blade Guard sergeant with a Neo-Volkite pistol. So the lieutenants from Indomitus are now my sergeants from my Blade Guard.
It's only the sergeant. I was about to go nuts.
They look
all
literally, their shields are the same, their armor are the same. That lieutenant looks like a Blade Guard, and that's because the Blade Guard multi-part kit, I think, can make the lieutenant model, or maybe. I'm not
Pull
sure.
them off the table. No, when we play your
That's funny, and it's neat too. Well, because like if you bought 3 of the Indominus sets, like Francois did, you're gonna have basically now you have 3 units of 4. And so generally, are you going to be running 3 units or just 2 units?
So my plan is to start with 2 units of 5, but I would still need an extra, right? Because I have 9 Blade Guard models from my 3 Indomitus boxes. But now if I use the lieutenants as sergeants, I have 11, I guess. So I can do 2 units of 5.
Should be 12, no?
Well, yes, 12. But now I can do 2 units of 5 and have the sergeant be distinctive looking, which is actually pretty important from a gameplay perspective because you want to know which one is your sergeant to know if he's still on the board or not. Yeah. And sometimes it's really confusing with these models that all look the same. And for yourself, but also for your opponent, it's nice that the sergeant is different.
And you go fast when you're in a chess clock and stuff. Yeah, so you buy an extra box and you'll be good to go.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Vanguard veterans, they are a little bit more appropriately pointed, I believe, in this book. but you might still see them, but it's kind of unknown at this point in time, but they still seem very good.
Yeah.
Stern Guards, so-so, Judicar, that's all
Judicar's
stuff.
changed.
Yeah, it's 3 inches instead of 6.
Yeah.
And also, it's a true fight last now. You can't interrupt it anymore. Like it's you're just not eligible.
Yeah, which I like because otherwise you kind of...
But see, 3 inches is easy to stay out of, though. So I don't know.
Easier to
way
stay out
easier.
of.
Well, so you can protect basically 1 unit, but that's pretty much it.
And he has to be almost in the thick of it. Like I've got caught with him behind. He was like behind a wall, where the other unit was like somewhere else, and I got caught with it because like 6 inches is still far enough.
3 inches behind a big base, and you can be a half inch away from your target before piling in because it's beginning of the fight phase. So you can still dance around him much easier with 3 inches than you could with 6.
Way easier. It's just like avoiding a heroic, right? Like it's like way easier.
You say way easier, but sometimes I run the Inquisitor with 1 inch and has to be in combat. So that's really easy.
That's
to play
even
around.
easier.
This is like, it's easier than it was before, but
so
I think 3 inches is still good.
He's still helpful on the offensive, though, because his ability has changed and it's a true fight last. If you want to make sure, if you're in 2 different combats and you don't want to get interrupted, you just use him to shut down one side and you start with the other, and now you're no longer under threat of interruption.
Yeah.
And he's also pretty damn good in combat.
For what he's a super strong ability. Super strong.
Yeah, he's still super strong. He's just not like oppressive.
And now he competes with your ancients and your apothecaries, and for those impulsor slots, right? If you're still running transports, he's definitely no longer something you're gonna definitely want to take. Think about it.
Yeah, so I want to say hello to, I think it's Cathal from Ireland, and also Renault is saying Vanguard vets with lightning claws get a crazy amount of attacks.
That is true.
They do. Yeah, so good stuff. So we'll keep going on. Reavers, very similar. Aggressors.
They're still terrible.
They're still terrible.
Aggressors
had a big nerf.
Yes.
That's me crying for my 15 aggressors.
See you later,
no
Joe.
More shoot twice. Yeah. That's gone. No more shoot twice. Big deal. I think that's... So a lot of people are like really upset, and you just said they're all dead. I think they're still decent. They're still good.
So here's the thing: the Space Marine Codex is so rich that aggressors taking that huge nerf would still be good in a different codex. But because Space Marines have all these options, there's probably better options.
They don't care.
But they're still good.
I'll give you that one for sure.
Plasma and Chapters, and then I heard Hellblasters are decent now.
Eradicators.
Eradicators. Yes.
Yeah, I think like a smaller unit of aggressors here and there still could see play just for the amount of shots, outflanking. I still really like them. They're still very tough. You're just not going to take that like big bubble. Yeah, flame ones are great with the 12 inches. Come on from a flank, boom, boom. I like that a lot. Terminators went up to 3 wounds each, which is probably where they should have been in the last book, to be honest.
Terminators are really good.
Yeah, especially Storm Shield guys. They're 2 up, 4 up now. So they're basically custodian guards for less points. So yeah.
But they're not that much less. And
they're where I would love my custodian guard to be, yes.
Because I have a large Deathwing army, and I know Deathwing Terminators are different than the regular Terminators, but it's still, when you start taking them in any numbers that matter, and then you start taking the characters to back them up, you don't have a lot of play in the army. So you could go like 1 unit, maybe like Thunderhammer Storm Shields or something crazy, put them in terrain. Now they're on a 0-up save, 4-up invul, and they're pretty good. But I think, I don't know. It's I think they're overhyped a little bit. But I'm also a Dark Angel player, and so if we talk supplement for a minute, they get a Feel No Pain, and depending on the type of Terminator you take, they get the if you take the Deathwing and stuff, they get the 4-up all the time, wound on 4-up. So that makes these guys look kind of crappy.
Built-in transhumans, so crazy.
We talked about Centurions. The big thing is they did not gain core, so they stay the same. I think that's their ability to kind of move them out of the range because they should have never been brought in the first place.
And they lost Bolter Discipline.
They did lose Bolter Discipline as well. So Centurions definitely fell in the power ladder. So Jason, please put yours in your driveway and drive over them with your truck.
Do it, Jason. Do it. Film it.
Now, so one of the best parts about this book is, they have the standard 6 dreadnoughts that Marines have had for a while, but with some of the abilities, some of the buffs, you can make dreadnoughts obsec, I believe, as well. They actually become more playable. They can hold they can kind of hold that position more, move up the board with your characters, and do a really good job. And they're actually fairly cheap.
And
they all got -1 damage.
All come with the
that was the big one.
That's crazy.
They all get -1 damage. So even though they were in the previous book, and you'd see a lot of people run like one of the super forgeal dreadnoughts or whatever, now you can run a lot of them, and you don't need to use those CPs. You can spread the wounds out, and they really do a nice job. One of my favorites is probably the Contemptor.
And that could be a character because it's 9 wounds now.
Well, yeah. The Redemptor now, I think, for its firepower, they also buffed the Gatling that he has. The fist is buffed. For the points, the Redemptor Dreadnought, I think definitely is worth thinking about. In some lists, like I wouldn't want to run it with White Scars, but if you're playing Iron Hands, a couple of Redemptors, it's something to think about.
That's awesome.
It feels a bit expensive.
Of them.
It's a big one too, it's large. So the only problem with the Redemptor for me is it feels a little bit expensive for what you want to do. Like when you start getting down in the Contemptor, maybe the Venerable range, or maybe the regular one, you can start taking 3 of them comfortably. And I think that's where these guys will shine, is taking lots of them. But maybe. You guys, I might be wrong.
Well, I'm waiting for my Telemon to get built-in -1 damage. That'd be nice.
I also, Darren, Custodians are doing just fine. Yeah. Anyways, I find there's also, it gives them an important distinction between the Invictor Tactical Warsuit. Because before it was like, that kind of just a dreadnought, But now it's got less toughness. It doesn't have Duty Eternal. And it's like, so now it feels like
it's also not core.
Yeah, so you feel like you're paying for that premium to be able to infiltrate the warsuit. And Correct. It feels like it's a warsuit, not a dreadnought. You know what I mean? So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just like the dreadnoughts now. I don't know. I haven't been able to make a list that I like a list with dreadnoughts and the characters that I like. I haven't done that yet, but they just feel really well pointed, and they fit in well with a lot of the buffs. So that's that. So we can move on. Big non-change that I think irritated a lot of people was the Outrider Squad stayed at 3 per unit because they are not getting a new kit.
I'm really, really sad about that because I wanted a kit. I wanted options, but also I wanted to run 18 Outriders in my White Scars. That would have looked so cool.
I think they might have been the weak point in that list, though, to be honest.
No, I know. I'm actually cutting 2 squads in my next iteration.
Yeah. Maybe they didn't sell. Well, I guess they were all in the same box that sold like crazy.
But I think the units of 3 are kind of weak, but if you bumped up to 6, now all of a sudden they have the volume of attacks and fire to actually do something.
Or 5. Come on.
Or 5,
yeah. You wouldn't go 6.
No, I would go 5.
And now we got that sweet, really cool looking Invader ATV that came out, guys.
Listen, it looks it's beautiful. It's rules beautiful.
What do you mean?
I don't know.
It looks terrible, but because I personally like the rules, I'm going to overlook the fact that it doesn't look so great. And you know what? I haven't seen it in person yet. We've only seen 2D pictures. Maybe when we see the model actually in front of us. Who am I kidding? It's terrible.
So I did the 360 view, and a lot, and it looks actually okay from the side and back. I think I think it just might be the profile of the picture. That you miss some of the detail.
Nolan's Batmobile had a shameful, weird love child with a go-kart, and that was it.
Well, I have 3 coming on Saturday, and I'm not ashamed to say that.
You should be. They're disgusting.
And maybe we'll see those on Tuesday on stream. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yep.
Maybe.
And maybe he'll use his chief apothecary to bring them back.
Maybe.
But they're pretty good with I've heard a lot of people say they're garbage and they're unplayable. I kind of like them in a lot of ways. They move fast. They got 8 wounds each, so that's very survivable. You give them like a Molting Melta or something like that, and it's a lot of damage.
You can res them.
I think that's going to go away, so I'm kind of...
Yeah, I'm not banking on that, but even without the resing with the Apothecary, plus they don't want to be close to the Apothecary. That's the thing. Like, their job is to be fast and go hunt things and get you engaged. And I don't think you want them to hug your Apothecary. If you want something to hug the Apothecary, there's better choices in the Codex.
So the best part about them is that they're
Like,
bikers,
Terminator.
not vehicles. So you can
Yes.
they almost fill that non-fly land speeder role, but you can also take land speeders if you want to, and these guys, and they kind of work well together. But you're only giving away, the kill vehicles for the speeders, so you can minimize that kind of hit. I think that was a big deal. If these would have been vehicles, you'd be hard pressed to really take them. But that alone is a nice feature.
Yeah, and I do like the multi-melta version, but I think people are sleeping a bit on the Onslaught Gatling Cannon, especially if there's even a little bit of Horde in the meta. All of a sudden, each one of those with their twin auto bolt rifles and their Onslaught Gatling Cannon is pumping out 14 shots.
And let's
times
face it,
3.
Horde is increasing in the meta.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially with the aggressor nerf, you may need something to fill that shots role. And that
So
could
a
be
squad is now shooting 42 things, 42 shots.
them. Yeah, that could be them.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so bike squad, scout bikes, very similar. Attack bikes, suppressors, inceptors, very similar. We have the new storm speeders, right? So we have 3 different variants of
These
them.
things
What do you
look
think of those?
awesome. Except for the dude who's like stuck in the top and he can't get out. I think these guys look really good.
As long as you model an enclosure around the guy at the top, or put like a window in front of him, then they're fine.
Yeah, they look good though. I like them.
Yeah, we already talked about the guy on the top. I think I'll just cut his head off and just pretend there's nobody there. Put a
I
camera
think
bit.
in Ravenwing, these things are going to be so good.
Why?
So they get native invuln up to 4 up for 1. And get all the Dark Angels tricks. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Could be good. I like him a lot. 10 wounds is good. Toughness 6. We'll just see.
I think they're a little pricey for my tastes. I'm not sure I'm as high on them as you are, but they're decent.
I'm not as high on them as Darren is, but I definitely think they're playable.
So the original speeders were overpriced till even just recently, right? They kept chopping land speeders, and so that maybe they've started again a little bit high on these speeders, but who knows? They just came out. They're not even out yet.
Yep. So I guess we're moving on. Land spears stayed relatively the same. Hellblasters, they kind of got a boost.
Yeah, they did.
Their plasma incinerators just got a +1 damage essentially, and they went strength 8 and strength 9.
Well, now the
supercharge.
And
the 3 different
ones.
Most people don't know that there's 3 different versions of that rifle because no one ever took the assault or heavy one.
Yeah.
But now there's a reason to take all 3 of them. They all have their uses.
And
I like the heavy one personally.
plasma just got universally changed to unmodified ones, so that helps you against -1 to hit and all that stuff.
On the flip side, you can no longer have a chaplain give them +1 and be invulnerable to blowing themselves up. So that comes out in the wash, I think.
Which a lot of people did, which is good. But yeah, the Hellblasters got a slight boost. But I'm curious on, you didn't see them a lot as it was but I'm kind of wondering if this is enough to make them playable. But we'll see.
Well, not with Eradicators pointed the way they are.
Oh, you're stealing my thunder. I was getting there.
And also, Dark Angels lost weapons from the Dark Ages for now, so
which makes sense. Eliminators stayed kind of the same. They kind of went with that change where they got rid of the
line of sight
through walls stuff, which I think Francois might have argued at the beginning of 9th that he thought it was a mistake, but I thought it was in purpose, and it was.
Listen, with the amount of copy-paste errors that GW makes, can you blame me for thinking it was a mistake?
Francois trying to squeeze out every last efficiency he can out of his Space Marines.
So the next kind of huge change, in my opinion, Eradicators. Went up 6 per squad. But they did kind of nerf the fact that they can no longer advance and shoot twice.
Oh, wow. Great.
Well, for my White Scars, it's a big deal, actually,
That's a
because
big
I was
deal,
planning
yeah.
on running them every single
That's
turn.
great.
I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying
No,
that's a
they're
change.
not.
They got the standard D6 +2 at short range as well with their Melta, so 12 inches, which is great if you're outflanking them. You come in close. Ba-boo! Gone tank, dead. But yeah, I think is 6 of them, like we talked about this last week a little bit on the cast, like, do you want 6? Is that required? You're gonna maybe overkill.
Five
That might
now.
not be
You
a
want
bad
5
thing.
now. It's the magic number.
Yeah, so I was looking at it like you could easily justify taking 15. Easily.
My sweet spot would be 12, 3 times 4.
Yeah, that's not far off from 3 times 5, to be honest.
Sure.
How many do you own? You only own, don't you?
I own 9,
Mm.
but I'm going to buy more.
But I think a lot of people are hyped up on the 3 squads of 5, 3 squads of 6, and just saying F it, go for the max damage. And I think they're right. I think it's good.
And then they're going to face 200 Termagants and lose.
The other issue, though, is 6 of them is very hard to outflank.
Yeah.
Because they go up to power rating 12. So now you're looking at for 3 CP for 2 units to outflank.
And in fact, as soon as you go to 4, you're now power level 12.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so you'd want to keep them at either 3 or probably.
So there is still an argument for 3 times 3 outflank all 3, unless you have access to an outflank stratagem like White Scarves, where you can just outflank a unit for ACP. In which case, outflank 6, no big deal.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. I think it's one of those units where if you're going to play Marines, go invest in more of these guys, but be prepared to put them on the shelf
In a year,
points like
or 6 months. Yeah.
But it might not come, so who knows? Because they've gone through it 1 nerf already, but they're definitely great. But you can always take 6 and combat squad them.
That's true. Yeah.
So that's kind of a moot point with the whole.
Well, I'm not sure that would work for the. So the combat squadding would not lower your power level for the infiltrate, would it?
Don't think so.
I'm not sure how that works, but I don't think that would get around the power level restriction for the infiltrate.
But even then, start them on the board.
Yeah.
Split them up, run them up. They're 3 wounds each, 3 plus save. Lots of options there. You can take 2 units of 3 when you have 6, and depending on your opponent, you could split it or you could not. Especially if you have that stratagem to outflank, you could spend the 1 on that and then the other 2 go. So yeah, you have a lot of options.
Do you think there's much value in putting a multi-melta in the unit, or the whatever the heavy melta rifle or whatever it's called?
I do. I think it depends on which chapter you're playing and the style of your army. Like, could 1 unit with heavy in your backfield and then 2 outflanking be good? Yeah, it could be.
Well, if you have Ultramarines, then yes, take the heavy, because then you won't take the penalty for moving.
And actually, I should point out as well that it's only the heavy melta that gets the +2 damage. The other one, it gets it all the time, and it gets +4 at.
So gross. +4 damage.
So when you get within 12 inches with the heavy ones, even though you might be hitting on a 4, you're getting +4 damage.
+4 damage.
Shooting twice. I don't know. I'm like, if I was gonna go serious Marines tomorrow, I think I would buy 15 of these. 100%. I don't know if you could. I don't know if there's an argument for not taking even. No, screw it. Even take 18. I don't think there's an argument to not take 18. Like if somebody took 18,
there is, because that's 720 points before the heavy rifles, and if that's kind of a big if, but if you run into a horde, that's 720 points. That's going to do very little.
Yeah, who's seen a horde recently?
They're coming back.
They're coming back.
Not in Ottawa.
Yeah, so they're good. Kind of says the same thing that we kind of said is. If you take a unit of 6 or you take a couple of 6, then if you're playing against something like knights or monsters, you can keep them together. And if not, you can't. Now, it also depends. If you're taking a chapter master, you'll want the bigger unit for the reroll hits for that 1 unit. So anyway, I don't want to, blow the Eradicators any more than we already are, but they're pretty damn good.
Go buy Eradicators.
Are they the best thing in the book? Probably. They're probably one of the best units in the book.
They're like way too cheap.
Zach did the math on them, and they blow everything out of the water in terms of point of damage per wound,
they're just too cheap.
Whatever. He had a stat, and anyways, it was just far and above everything else in the game in terms of the amount of damage they do for their points.
And survivability. Man, three
and
wounds,
they're
3
Gravis Marines, right? So it's like, they're just too
5,
cheap.
yeah.
They're just too cheap.
So my favorite unit is the Blade Guard, but yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah. Sorry, I said best unit, not favorite unit. Blade Guard are pretty damn good too. Devastators, they're decent. There's an argument to be made for the multi-melta Devastators and the drop pod and things of that nature, and the fact that they can go in a drop pod, take 4 heavy weapons. It's kind of a big deal.
Probably won't see Grav anymore.
I don't think so. I just don't think so.
There's no reason to take Grav without the strat.
Thunderfire Cannon's got another nerf. So they lost some AP, which is good. Nobody really liked them anyway. Buy Thunderfire Cannons.
I own 6.
6.
That's what you get.
So glad I didn't buy any of those. And then they added the new Fire Strike servo turrets. These things are decent, right? It's basically a weapons platform. You have twin link autocannons, heavy 6. You have las cannons, 4 shots. At toughness 5 wounds. They're a vehicle.
I think it's terrible.
How many
don't
points?
think you're going
How
to
many
see
points?
them, but I don't know off the top of my head actually.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it replaces. It's a solution without a problem. Like you have so much other stuff, you don't really need it.
Yeah,
I don't think you'll take it.
and it only moves 3. This is a game where you want to move now. Like 9th edition
It's
is
a platform
game, and so any unit. Well, it shouldn't move at all. I agree. But yeah,
Nah, come on, it's got little
fuck
feet.
that. It
They
should
walk.
just be like boom. and
Marine
done.
gets out
Yeah.
and pushes.
So one of the big changes, I guess, when we get further deeper in the heavy supports, the Hunter's the same, blah, blah, but they split the
Hunter's not the
Predators
same.
out, which is a minor change,
Plus
right?
2 to hit now against aircraft, so hits on 2s.
Okay.
D6 plus 6 damage.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to take one?
They
Well,
also
I'm
lost
not
their
playing
penalty
Marines,
to hitting
but-
non-fly.
Yeah, so like
Rocket
it's
areas.
way better at killing aircraft.
Yeah, I just don't think you see the aircraft. I don't think they have the same impact on the game to justify taking one. But maybe if that changes.
I don't know. Lots of AdMech helicopters flying around. Custodes
Helicopter.
puters breaking
Those
out
things
Ares.
die. Those AdMech helicopters, they die pretty easily.
Well, they'll die pretty easily now.
Not
Yeah.
easy enough.
Anyway, I'm not saying you should take a Hunter. I'm just saying that it has changed to
It
make
did change. You're correct.
way
You're
more
correct.
anti-aircraft.
I
Because
just glossed
before there
over
was
that
no
because
reason to take
there's
it
no
over
need.
just taking like a bunch of like Devastators or whatever. Like
But when you have things that have 24-inch melta guns that shoot
Exactly.
twice, hit on 3s against aircraft, now you're hitting on 4s, you're probably still going to blow up the aircraft, and you're going to be able to kill ground targets.
Yeah.
So the cool thing I thought, though, is I don't know if they have play, but they split the Predators out. So you could take 6 Predators, and that would theorize that when the Blood Angels come out, you could take 9 now. Because you could take 3 balls, Predators.
That would be a terrible idea.
So I think it's a terrible idea, but it gives you that option. But it's
It would
terrible.
look super cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I would hate to. I don't know. I just love Predators for some reason.
wait, weren't they bringing out like new Primaris Predators?
Yeah, they're called the Gladiator.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
we haven't got there yet. Yeah.
So the next one is they split it, so you can take 6 Predators instead
Nice.
of
Do it.
3. Gladiators, they're really good. Am I the only one that thinks that? Toughness 8, 12 wounds, lots of firepower.
So, coming from someone who also has an Imperial Guard army, I'll tell you, a toughness 8 tank without an invuln dies really quickly.
Yeah, it's true.
Is it any different?
And
from
they're
a
not
repulsor, though?
exactly cheap. Like they're 240, 250 points, something like that.
Correct.
So yeah, they're cheaper than a Repulsor Executioner, sure. Now that one is trash. We'll get to that. But I guess it depends. But with how many Eradicators are going to be running around, I'd be real careful.
And
about
just run
including
Eradicators.
So that's gonna be the running theme with the Marine book, heavy support choice.
Just
to
run
be honest.
Eradicators.
Anyway, there's three variants of them, but they're not terrible. I don't think they're terrible, but I like them.
They see if they had not removed fly from all the Grav tanks, then maybe. But the fact that they also don't fly on top of everything else, personally, I'm pretty cold on them.
Okay, we'll see. Next was the Vindicator had a decent change where it can now get a 2-up armor save, which is okay if you're running a Vindicator, but I haven't seen these since
Me neither.
a long time.
Long time.
Yeah. Land Raiders, they changed the machine spirit. But other than that, it's nothing too crazy. Big ones, repulsor executioners. So the big change there is repulsors are no longer dedicated transports. They're now a heavy sport choice. So they kind of got a nerf from that, which means you can't spam 12 of them. Or 10 of them, as I may have done.
At some point.
At some point. They lost fly. I think the repulsor has some long, hard days ahead of it. It's a little bit more expensive than some of the other tanks.
Main turret only fires 2 shots, not 4 shots.
Yeah, so it only gets shoot the one time. So the life of the repulsor's gone down. As Darren said, they lost the -2 to charge. They've really lost a lot, and their points cost is still relatively high compared to a lot of the other tanks in this book.
They're terrible now.
I kind of regret not selling my 5 repulsors, if I'm being honest, at this point. Next, we have the standard transports, Rhino Razorback, and the Impulsor got a big nerf. So it lost its fly and it went down to a 5+ invul save, which is a big deal.
Yep.
Those Impulsors, part of what made them get across the board was the fact that they could go behind a ruin, fly over the ruin, probably not die, or if they did die, you had to dedicate so much of your firepower into them with that 4+ invul, and that it would just like take away a lot of your teeth. And then when the Blade Guard got out, you didn't have enough shots left over to kill them.
Yeah.
So now they're going to go down a little bit easier. I still think they're the best transport in the game. I'd take them over.
Well,
like,
the best transport
in the army, not the game.
Yeah, because in the game, I think it may be the Wave Serpent still, but
or the Salt Drill.
Maybe, but I'm still going to play 2 in my Scars list. I think they're still good. I think they still have a place.
Yeah, the 2 or 1, but 5+ invul is still really good.
Yeah,
like just because they got nerfed doesn't mean they're crap. Like they're still good, right?
Yeah, they went down like 5 points or something.
Yep. I think everything else basically stayed the same, and then they added the Hammerfall bunker.
Did they lose a flyer? Because there's only 1 flyer here.
No, there's the Stormhawk Interceptor.
There wasn't like a Storm Talon or something?
Yeah, they combined the sheet.
Yeah, but it's just 1 unit now, yeah.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
And they lost they lost the stupid random +1s for doing nothing, essentially. So they're just more of a standard flyer now. But yeah, you're right. They kind of
potatoes.
But like there's no real, it's not like you can spam flyers anymore anyway.
Yeah.
On 3, so not a big deal.
And then that new bunker.
I like it. It reminds me of StarCraft.
Yeah,
a little bit, yeah.
It's
a lot. That's the command center, man. Like
its rules are terrible.
Oh, okay. Well, it sucks.
Because it's going to shoot at everything in range, yes, but it's only a couple of shots, and so it's going to plink wounds here and there. It hits on 4s, I think. It's still a fortification with all the problems that come with that. It's not cheap. Buy one to put on your display board, maybe, to look cool. But
I got to tell you,
it's not going to be.
I'm a little bit surprised that thing doesn't move 3 inches.
It should move. Or it should be able to fly. Like it should be like the command center for the Terran on StarCraft. You should be able to lift it up. You should be able to upgrade the top. You should be able to put a nuclear silo on the side of it.
Back
and
in.
then a Vindicare assassin should put the friggin' laser. Boom!
And from
nuclear
the pictures
detected.
We haven't seen the kit yet, it's not out, but from the pictures in the book, it looks pretty small actually. I expected it to be bigger than that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It looks big enough. I don't know. Like those
I think they could have done a
Outriders
pod
right next to it.
They could have done a drop pod that did something similar, and it would have been more fitting with the army.
A Primaries drop pod feels like a missed opportunity. That's a hole still in the line.
So do you want to get to the best part of the new book?
What is that?
It's over?
No. They changed the way that they do points values in the back of the book.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is like game changing. So what they did now is they basically give you your option and your war gear under that option. And if your war gear isn't listed, it's free.
Yeah.
So the bolt pistol's not listed, frag grenades, crack, whatever. So basically, yeah, if you want to buy a captain, you look at it, captain, unit, it says the unit size, it says his cost, and then you can all of his upgrades. So now you don't have to friggin' basically what I used to do is I would photocopy the war gear page and I would have it next to my codex book, and that's how I'd make my list quickly.
And the points for war gear seem to change depending on the model.
Yeah.
Which is the best
Melta,
part.
Yeah, for a captain is 5 points, and a Combi Melta for a bike captain is 10 points.
Yes, and that allows them to, because it was kind of hard before, like it gives that granularity to really truly balance things.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
have that power, and I love that. Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and they also kind of made things in intervals of 5 for the most part. It's not necessarily unit costs, but war gear is, and there's a lot of units that end in 5 or 0, so it just makes that list balancing a little bit easier. There's still some things that are 18 points and whatever, but for the most part, it looks a lot cleaner and easier to handle. Oh yeah, that's, to me, that was like, oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So now you can photocopy those 4 pages out the back of your book, and you can write lists anywhere.
Yeah.
Or use Battlescribe, but
Well,
sometimes-
for the next like week or so, Battlescribe won't be updated, so you
I
use
know,
the
it's-
codex for the
Or
first week.
you can use the Warhammer 40k.
I didn't want to talk about that. Yeah, I don't even
That
want to
was
talk
on
about
point,
it.
Nick.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay, so that's kind of our take on the Marine
Oh,
book.
man.
If you have any questions, throw them in the
I'm
chat.
exhausted.
But that's
Me
what's
too.
changed.
It's a big book, but we have been talking for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we went quick through a lot of stuff, and we're open to being wrong, and things will change. But for the most part,
We're always right.
I want to end on kind of where you think the power level has shifted. And so I think we'll start with Francois, because he's maybe the most biased.
Well, no, I actually kind of like this
Totally
book. Like, there's
biased.
lots and lots of nerfs. Like, we've been talking mostly about
So
things that got
biased.
nerfed. I don't think that the Marines are bad by any means. I think they're still very good. They're just not S tier anymore, which they were. Now, the issue is that Marines were already not winning everything. Well, whatever tournaments are happening now, which kind of half doesn't count, but there's other army lists that were performing almost as good or even better in some instances. So we'll have to see where they slot compared to Death Guard, Chaos Demons, Harlequins, Custodes. They might now be a little bit below those other 4, but they're still probably a top 5 army.
Yep. Nick, do you have an opinion on the power level of the new Marines before we've seen really too many tournaments with them?
Okay, yeah. So this is a bit of a shot in the dark because there's, like you said, I'm the weaver of math, so it's tough to really assess at the moment. My hunch is they are still the top book by and large the top book. I don't think they're as oppressively good now. I think it's going to take Marine players a little bit more, muscle to, cognitive muscle to make it, to the top tables. My only asterisk to that, though, is the Eradicators. Since they're, you can take them in units of 6. They can be transhuman. You can use that +1 armor save strat on them. And potentially they can be OBSEC if you have the Chapter Ancient. There's just a lot that goes in Eradicators. They can be fairly meta-defining, but who knows? Like, we need to see events first before that's conclusive. All in all, I think I'm pretty
I don't
happy
think we
with,
need to.
Yeah.
I think those might be one of the best units in the game.
Yeah. All in all, I think it is an improvement over in terms of just cleanliness and in terms of how it's structured, how it's encompassing the other chapter. Good book. And I think we're all foolish if we are not expecting Marines to be a top book. It's in GW's best interest to make Marines at least a top player. They can't have them be a bottom player, that's for sure.
Yeah. Darren?
I think Marines didn't go up or down. They just moved laterally. So some things that were too good are now not as good, and other things have replaced them. I mean, you've got 100 data sheets. There's going to be stuff in there that's good, regardless of what you do to whatever is good right now. I think they're just as good as they were. The list will change a little bit. Eradicators are going to be crazy. I mean, in terms of like where Marines stand compared to Custodes, we are shitting our pants when you can throw that many shots coming in off the edge of the board, which if we don't roll a 4-up, we're screwed. Auto dead. Like, it's just really... Eradicators, I suspect, will be oppressive for a little bit until people either figure it out or they get tuned down. But I don't think Marines have gone down at all. I think they've just moved sideways to different lists.
Yep, and Andrew's saying that he thinks Eradicators, ATCs, and Apothecaries are going to be everywhere. I think so as well. I think, personally, I think this book slightly did drop a little bit. But it kind of took the edge off the stuff that was oppressive, to use Francois's word against him. So it dropped the oppressive stuff, and it kind of moved the kind of good stuff in the army, kind of spread it around a little bit. So besides the Eliminators, I think most of it's pretty damn good, pretty solid. I think it's going to be a top book, but it should be, because power creep is a real thing. So the newest book should generally be the top. We just don't want them to be 4 times the top, which we're seeing now, right? We're seeing Marines 4 times above everyone else's win rate. We want them just kind of up there. And I think this could be appropriate for that. Nick's about to die his laptop. It said 5%. That's pretty funny. So from that kind of respect, I think the book is deep enough that you're going to see it do well. It's going to win events still. But you're right. Things like Harlequins have definitely caught up in the meta. Things like Death Guard, depending on their new book, and Chaos in general has the same advantage. So why do you always see good Chaos players at the top? The books synergize and have have a lot of depth to them, and Marines have that same thing. So I think it's going to be in the top 2 for sure, maybe top 1. I think Custodians have actually fallen a little bit, and I think the more Marines you see and the more Eradicators you see, a lot of armies may say, "Oh, well, Custodians still rock me," and it's really hard to deal with. But if somebody's saying 18 Eradicators, it's a lot of dead Custodians.
I can't deal with that. I can't. There's nothing we have. I can't deal with that.
So
it's a game of 4-ups at that point, and you can't roll that many 4-ups.
Well, 3-ups if you bring your.
But then you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything.
And so I think if we're talking about weapon changes, we have a question. Andrew's talking. He says Sisters probably made out the best out of this whole Marine update because of course, all the weapons propagated throughout all the other armies.
Well, you'll find out Saturday.
Yeah, I think that's correct. But a lot of my Sisters lists don't include any of the weapons that got buffed, if I'm being honest, now that I've moved to a more Guard Sister kind of model. But it should be pretty good. So do we have any questions from the Discord there, Darren?
No, we did not. No.
Great. I think we kind of covered this enough. So we'll maybe forgo Q&A from the chat for this episode. So I think have a good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us.
Bye.